This is wonderful.
Audio Renaissance presents The Dragon Reborn by Robert Jordan. Read for you by Kate Redding and Michael Kramer.
Part 1. And his paths shall be many, and who shall know his name? He shall be born among us many times, in many guises, as he has been and ever will be, time without end. His coming shall be like the sharp edge of the plow, turning our lives in furrows from out of the places where we lie in our silence. The breaker of bonds, the forger of chains, the maker of futures, the unshaper of destiny. From Commentaries on the Prophecies of the Dragon by Jurith Doreen, right hand to the Queen of Almorin, 742 A.D., the Third Age. Prologue. Fortress of the Light. Pedron Niles' aged gaze wandered about his private audience chamber, but dark eyes hazed with thought saw nothing. Tattered wall hangings, once battle banners of the enemies of his youth, faded into dark wood paneling laid over stone walls, thick even here in the heart of the Fortress of the Light. The single chair in the room, heavy, high-backed, and almost a throne, was as invisible to him as the few scattered tables that completed the furnishings. Even the white-cloaked man kneeling with barely restrained eagerness on the great sunburst set in the wide planks of the floor had vanished from Niles' mind for the moment, though few would have dismissed him so lightly. Jarrett Byer had been given time to wash before being brought to Nile, but both his helmet and his breastplate were dulled from travel and battered from use. Dark, deep-set eyes shone with a feverish, urgent light in a face that seemed to have had every spare scrap of flesh boiled away. He wore no sword, none was allowed in Niles' presence, but he seemed poised on the edge of violence, like a hound awaiting the loosing of the leash. Twin fires on long hearths at either end of the room held off the late winter cold. It was a plain soldier's room, really. Everything well made, but nothing extravagant, except for the sunburst. Furnishings came to the audience chamber of the Lord Captain Commander of the Children of the Light, with the man who rose to the office. The flaring sun of coined gold had been worn smooth by generations of petitioners, replaced and worn smooth again. Gold enough to buy any estate in Amadisia, and the patent of nobility to go with it. For 10 years, Nile had walked across that gold and never thought of it twice, any more than he thought of the sunburst embroidered across the chest of his white tunic. Gold held little interest for Pedron Nile. Eventually, his eyes went back to the table next to him, covered with maps and scattered letters and reports. 3 loosely rolled drawings lay among the jumble. He took one up reluctantly. It did not matter which. All depicted the same scene, though by different hands. Nile's skin was as thin as scraped parchment, drawn tight by age over a body that seemed all bone and sinew. But there was nothing of frailty about him. No man held Nile's office before his hair was white, nor did any man softer than the stones of the Dome of Truth. Still, he was suddenly aware of the tendon-ridged back of a hand holding the drawing, aware of the need for haste. Time was growing short. His time was growing short. It had to be enough. He had to make it enough. He made himself unroll the thick parchment halfway, just enough to see the face that interested him. The chalks were a little smudged from travel in saddlebags, but the face was clear. A gray-eyed youth with reddish hair. He looked tall, but it was hard to say for certain. Aside from the hair and the eyes, he could have been set down in any town without exciting comment. This boy has proclaimed himself the Dragon Reborn, Kyle muttered. The Dragon. The name made him feel the chills of winter and age. The name borne by Luz Theron Telamon when he doomed every man who could channel the one power, then or ever after, to insanity and death, himself among them. It was more than 3,000 years since Aes Sedai Pride and the War of the Shadow had brought an end to the Age of Legends. 3,000 years, but prophecy and legend help men remember. The heart of it, at least, if the details were gone. Lews Therin Kinslayer, the man who had begun the breaking of the world. When madmen who could tap the power that drove the universe leveled mountains and sank ancient lands beneath the seas. When the whole face of the earth had been changed, and all who survived fled like beasts before a wildfire. It had not ended until the last male Aes Sedai lay dead, and a scattered human race could begin trying to rebuild from the rubble, or even rubble remained. It was burned into memory by the stories mothers told children, and prophecy said the dragon would be born again. Niall had not really meant it for a question, but Bayar took it for one. Yes, my lord Captain Commander, he has. It is a worse madness than any false dragon I've ever heard of. Thousands have declared for him already. Tarabon and Arad Doman are in civil war, as well as at war with each other. There is fighting all across Almost Plain and Toman Head. Tarabonner against Domani, against Dark Friends, crying for the dragon. Or there was fighting until winter chilled most of it. I've never seen it spread so quickly, my lord Captain Commander. Like throwing a lantern into a hay barn. The snow may have damped it down, but come spring, the flames will burst out hotter than before. Niall cut him off with a raised finger. Twice already Niall had let him tell his story through, his voice burning with anger and hate. Parts of it Niall knew from other sources, and in some areas, he knew more than Bayar. But each time he heard it, it goaded him anew. Jeffram Bornhold and 1,000 of the children dead. And Aes Sedai did it. You have no doubts, child Bayar? None, my lord Captain Commander. After a skirmish on the way to Falma, I saw 2 of the Tarvalin witches. They cost us more than 50 dead before we stuck them full of arrows. You are sure, huh? Sure they were Aes Sedai? The ground erupted under our feet. Bayar's voice was firm, full of belief. He had little imagination, did Jareth Bayar. Death was part of a soldier's life, however it came. Lightnings struck our ranks out of a clear sky. My lord Captain Commander, what else could they have been? Niall nodded grimly. There had been no male Aes Sedai since the breaking of the world. But the women who still claimed that title were bad enough. They prated on their 3 oaths. To speak no word that was not true, to make no weapon for one man to kill another, to use the one power as a weapon only against dark friends or shadow spawn. But now they had showed those oaths for the lies they were. He'd always known no one could want the power they wielded except to challenge the Creator. That meant to serve the Dark One. And you know nothing of those who took Falma and killed half of one of my legions. Lord Captain Bornhold said they called themselves Shonchan, my Lord Captain Commander, Bayar said stolidly. He said they were dark friends, and his charge broke them, even if they killed him. His voice gained intensity. There were many refugees from the city. Everyone I spoke to agreed the strangers had broken and fled. Lord Captain Bornhold did that. Niall sighed softly. They were almost the same words Bayar had used the first 2 times about the army that had seemingly come out of nowhere to take Falma. A good soldier, Niall thought. So Jeffram Bornhold always said. But not a man to think for himself. My Lord Captain Commander, Bayar said suddenly. Lord Captain Bornhold did command me to stand aside from the battle. I was to watch and report to you. And tell his son, Lord Daein, how he died. Yes, Niall said impatiently. For a moment he studied Bayar's hollow-cheeked face, then added, No one doubts your honesty or courage. It is exactly the sort of thing Jeffram Bornhold would do, facing a battle in which he feared his entire command might die. And not the sort of thing you have imagination enough to think of. There was nothing more to learn from the man. You have done well, child Bayar. You have my leave to carry word of Jeffram Bornhold's death to his son. Daein Bornhold is with Eamon Valda, Near Tarvalin at last report. You may join them. Thank you, my lord Captain Commander. Thank you. Byer rose to his feet and bowed deeply. Yet as he straightened, he hesitated. My lord Captain Commander, we were betrayed. Hatred gave his voice a sawtoothed edge. By this one dark friend you spoke of, child Byer. He could not keep an edge out of his own voice. A year's planning lay in ruins amid the corpses of 1,000 of the children, and Byer wanted to talk only of this one man. This young blacksmith you've only seen twice. Is Heron from the Two Rivers? Yes, my lord Captain Commander. I do not know how, but I know he is to blame. I know it. I will see what can be done about him, child Byer. Byer opened his mouth again, but Niall raised a thin hand to forestall him. You may leave now. The gaunt-faced man had no choice but to bow again and leave. As the door closed behind him, Niall lowered himself into his high-backed chair. What had brought on Byer's hatred of this parent? There were far too many dark friends to waste energy on hating any particular one. Too many dark friends, high and low, hiding behind glib tongues and open smiles, serving the Dark One. Still, one more name added to the lists would do no harm. He shifted on the hard chair, trying to find comfort for his old bones. Not for the first time he thought vaguely that perhaps a cushion would not be too much luxury. And not for the first time he pushed the thought away. The world tumbled toward chaos, and he had no time to give in to age. He let all the signs that foretold disasters swirl through his mind. War gripped Taraban and Aradaman. Civil war gripped at Kyrian, and war fever was rising in Tyr and Ilion, old enemies as they were. Perhaps these wars meant nothing in themselves. Men fought wars. But they usually came one at a time. Aside from the false dragon somewhere on Alma's plain, another tore at Saldaea, and a third plagued Tyr. 3 at once. They must all be false dragons. They must be. A dozen small things besides, some perhaps only faceless rumors, but taken together with the rest. Sightings of Aiel reported as far west as Mirandy and Kandor. Only 2 or 3 in one place, but 1 or 1,000, Aiel had come out of the waste just once in all the years since the breaking. Only in the Aiel War they ever left that desolate wilderness. The Atha'an Mier, the sea folk, were said to be ignoring trade to seek signs and portents. Of what exactly, they did not say. Sailing with ships half full or even empty. Ilion had called the Great Hunt of the Horn for the first time in almost 400 years, had sent out the hunters to seek the fabled Horn of Val'ir, which prophecy said would summon dead heroes from the grave to fight in Tarmangeddon, the last battle against the Shadow. Rumors said the Ogier, always so reclusive that most common people thought them only legend, had called meetings between their far-flung steading. Most telling of all, to Niall, the Aes Sedai had apparently come into the open. It was said they had sent some of their sisters to Saldaea to confront the false dragon, Nazrim Taim. Rare as it was in men, Taim could channel the one power. That was a thing to fear and despise in itself, and few thought a man like that could be defeated except with the aid of Aes Sedai. Better to allow Aes Sedai help than to face the inevitable horrors when he went mad, as such men inevitably did. But Tarvalin had apparently sent other Aes Sedai to support the other false dragon at Falma. Nothing else fit the facts. The pattern chilled the marrow in his bones. Chaos multiplied, what was unheard of, happening again and again. The whole world seemed to be milling, stirring near the boil. It was clear to him, the last battle really was coming. All his plans were destroyed, the plans that would have secured his name among the children of the light for 100 generations. But turmoil meant opportunity. He had new plans, with new objectives, if he could keep the strength and will to carry them out. Right, let me hold on to life long enough. A deferential knock on the door brought him out of his dark thoughts. "Come," he snapped. A servant in coat and breeches of white and gold bowed his way in. Eyes to the floor, he announced that Jacob Carradine, anointed of the light, inquisitor of the Hand of the Light, came at the command of the Lord Captain Commander. Carradine appeared on the man's heels, not waiting for Niall to speak. Niall gestured the servant to leave. Before the door was fully closed again, Carradine dropped to one knee with a flourish of his snowy cloak. Behind the sunburst on the cloak's breast lay the scarlet shepherd's crook, the Hand of the Light, called the Questioners by many, though seldom to their faces. "As you have commanded my presence, my Lord Captain Commander," he said in a strong voice, "so have I returned from Tarabon." Niall examined him for a moment. Carradine was tall, well into his middle years, with a touch of gray in his hair, yet fit and hard. His dark, deep-set eyes had a knowing look about them, as always. And he did not blink under the silent study of the Lord Captain Commander. Few men had consciences so clear or nerves so steady. Carradine knelt there, waiting as calmly as if it were an everyday matter to be ordered curtly to leave his command, and return to Amador without delay, no reasons given. But then it was said Jacob Carradine could outweigh a stone. "Rise, child Carradine." As the other man straightened, Niall added, "I have had disturbing news from Falmouth." Carradine straightened the folds of his cloak as he answered. His voice rode the edge of suitable respect, almost as if he spoke to an equal, rather than to the man he had sworn to obey to the death. "My Lord Captain Commander refers to the news brought by Charles Jarrett Byhar, late second to the Lord Captain Bornholt." The corner of Niall's left eye fluttered, an old presage of anger. Supposedly, only 3 men knew Byhar was in Amador, and none besides Niall knew from where he came. "Do not be too clever, Carradine. Your desire to know everything may one day lead you into the hands of your own questioners." Carradine showed no reaction beyond a slight tightening of his mouth at the name. "My Lord Captain Commander, the Hand seeks out truth everywhere to serve the light. To serve the light, not to serve the children of the light. All the children serve the light, but Pedro and Niall often wondered if the questioners really considered themselves part of the children at all. And what truth do you have for me about what occurred in Falmouth?" "Dark friends, my Lord Captain Commander." "Dark friends?" Niall's chuckle held no amusement. "A few weeks gone, I was receiving reports from you that Geoffrey Bornholt was a servant of the Dark One because he moved soldiers onto Thomond Head against your orders." His voice became dangerously soft. "You now mean me to believe that Bornholt, as a Dark Friend, led 1,000 of the children to their deaths fighting other Dark Friends?" "Whether or not he was a Dark Friend will never be known," Carradine said blandly, "since he died before he could be put to the question. The Shadow's plots are murky and often seem mad to those who walk in the light. But that those who seized Falmouth were Dark Friends, I have no doubt. Dark Friends and Aes Sedai in support of a false dragon. It was the one power that destroyed Bornholt and his men. Of that I am sure, my Lord Captain Commander. Just as it destroyed the armies that Tarabon and Aradoman sent against the Dark Friends in Falmouth." "And what of the stories that those who took Falmouth came from across the arid ocean?" Carradine shook his head. "My Lord Captain Commander, the people are full of rumors. Some claim they were the armies Otter Hawkwing sent across the ocean 1,000 years ago come back to claim the land. Why, some even claim to have seen Hawkwing himself in Falmouth, and half the heroes of legend besides. The West is boiling from Tarabon to Soldaia, and 100 new rumors bubble to the surface every day, each more outrageous than the last. These so-called Shan were no more than another rabble of Dark Friends gathered to support a false dragon, only this time with open Aes Sedai support. What proof have you?" Niall made his voice sound as if he doubted the point. "Do you have prisoners?" "No, my Lord Captain Commander. As Child Byhar no doubt told you, Bornhold managed to hurt them badly enough that they dispersed. And certainly, no one we've questioned would admit to supporting a false dragon. As for proof, it lies in two parts. If my Lord Captain Commander will permit me. Niall gestured impatiently. The first part is negative. Few ships have tried to cross the Arith Ocean, and most never returned. Those that did turned back before they ran out of food and water. Even the sea folk will not cross the Arith. They sail wherever there is trade, even to the lands beyond the Isle Waste. My Lord Captain Commander, if there are any lands across the ocean, they are too far to reach, the ocean too wide. To carry an army across it would be as impossible as flying. Perhaps, I said slowly. It is certainly indicative. That is your second part. My Lord Captain Commander, many of those we questioned spoke of monsters fighting for the Dark Friends, and held to their claims even under the last degree of the question. What could they be but Trollocs and other shadow spawn, in some way brought down from the Blight? Carden spread his hands as if that were conclusive. Most people think Trollocs are only travelers' tales and lies, and most of the rest think they were all killed in the Trolloc Wars. What other name would they put to a Trolloc but monster? Yes. Yes, you may be right, Carden. Maybe, I said. He would not give Carden the satisfaction of knowing he agreed. Let it work a while. But what of him? He indicated the rolled drawings. If he knew Carden, the Inquisitor had copies in his own chambers. How dangerous is he? Can he channel the One power? The Inquisitor merely shrugged. Perhaps he can channel, perhaps not. Aes Sedai could no doubt make people believe a cat could channel if they wanted to. As to how dangerous he is, any false dragon is dangerous until he is put down. One with Tarvalin openly behind him is 10 times dangerous. But he is less dangerous now than he will be in half a year unchecked. The captives I questioned had never seen him, had no idea where he is now. His forces are fragmented. I doubt there are more than 200 gathered in any one place. The Taravaners or the Damani, either one could sweep them away if they weren't so busy fighting each other. Even a false dragon, Niall said dryly, is not enough to make them forget 400 years of squabbling over possession of Almost Plague.
Hey, Scum, how you doing, Auntie?
Neither of them ever had the strength to hold it. Carden's face did not change, and Niall wondered how he could keep so calm. It not become a much longer question. It is of no import, my Lord Captain Commander. Winter keeps them all in their camps, except for scattered skirmishes and raids. When the weather warms enough for troops to move. Bornhold took only half his legion to their deaths on Tillman Head. With the other half, I will hunt this false dragon to his death. A corpse is not dangerous to anyone. And if you face what seems Bornhold faced, Aes Sedai channeling the power to kill, their witchery doesn't protect them from arrows in the dark. They die as quickly as anyone else. Carden smiled. I promise you I will be successful before summer.
Hell yeah, appreciate it.
The man was confident.
I'm actually, it's my first
the dangerous question
night back home.
If they were
I was,
you should have remembered, Carden.
Whatchamacallit, I was at my mom's house sitting. So me and Ozzy rode there. Well, house in Dog City.
Did you not take your own forces to follow? With Dark Friends on Tillman Head, an army of them holding Falmouth.
Never hope you're doing good.
To stop.
There, Scum.
Carden blinked, but his voice remained steady. At first, they were only rumors, my Lord Captain Commander. Rumors so wild, no one could believe. By the time I learned the truth, Bornhold had joined the battle. He was dead, and the Dark Friends scattered. Besides, my task was to bring the light to Almoth Plain. I could not disobey my orders to chase after rumors. Your task, Niall said, his voice rising as he stood. Carden topped him by a head, but the Inquisitor stepped back. Your task. Your task was to seize Almouth Plain, an empty bucket that no one holds except by words and claims. And all you had to do was fill it. The nation of Almouth would have lived again, ruled by the children of the light, with no need to pay lip service to a fool of a king. Amadesia and Almouth, a vice-gripping Tarabon. In 5 years, we would have held sway there as much as here in Amadesia. We made a dog's dinner of it. The smile at last. My Lord Captain Commander, Carter protested. How can I foresee what happened? Yet another false dragon? Tarabon and Arad Damand, finally going to war after so long, merely growling at each other? And Aes Sedai revealing their true selves after 3,000 years of dissembling? Even with that, though, all is not lost. I can find and destroy this false dragon before his followers unite. And once the Taraboners and Domani have weakened themselves, they can be cleared from the plain without... No! I'll snap. Your plans are done with, Cardigan. Perhaps I should hand you over to your own questioners right now. The High Inquisitor would not object. He is gnashing his teeth to find someone to blame for what happened. He would never put forward one of his own.
Yeah.
But I doubt he'd quibble if it A few
Or
days
live
under the
and
question and
back
you'd confess to anything.
Back
Giving
in my
yourself
room, at
dark
least.
friend even. You would go under the headsman's axe inside a week.
How you doing, Dick Claves?
Card its forehead. My Lord Captain Commander. He stopped to swallow. My Lord Captain Commander seems to be saying there is another way. If you will but speak it, I am sworn to obey. Now, I'll run. Toss the dice. Prickles ran across his skin as if he were in battle, and had suddenly realized that every man for 100 paces around him was an enemy. Lord Captain Commanders do not go to the headsman, but more than one have been known to die suddenly and unexpectedly, swiftly mourned and swiftly replaced by men with less dangerous ideas. Child, he said firmly, you will make certain that this false dragon does not die.
Got my dap pins to
If
hit
any Aes
first.
Sedai come to oppose rather than support him, you will make use of your knives.
But this
in the
one
dark.
is almost
The Inquisitor's
gone.
jaw dropped.
And then
Yet he
got
recovered
my
quickly,
key lime
eyeing
pie.
Niall in speculative fashion. Kill Aes Sedai is a duty, but to allow a false dragon to roam free, that would be treason and blasphemy. Niall drew a deep breath. He could sense the unseen knives waiting in the shadows. But he was committed now. It is no treason to do what must be done. And even blasphemy can be tolerated for a cause. Those two sentences alone were enough to kill him. Do you know how to unite people behind you, child Carnady? The quickest way. No? Loose a lion. A rabid lion in the streets. And when panic grips the people, once it has turned their bowels to water, calmly tell them you will deal with it. Then you kill it. To hang the carcass up there. Before they have time to think, you give another order, and it will be obeyed. If you continue to give orders, they will continue to obey, for you will be the one who saves. And who better to lead? Harden moved his head uncertainly. You mean to take it all? But Tarban and Arad Damand as well? What I mean is for me to know. It is for you to obey as you are sworn to do. I expect to hear of messengers on fast horses leaving for the plain by tonight. I am certain you know how to word the orders so no one suspects what they should not. If you must harry someone, let it be the Taraboners and Domani. It would not do to have them kill my lion. No. Under the light, there is peace between them. As my Lord Captain Commander commands, Carden said smoothly, I hear and obey. Too smoothly. Niall smiled a cold smile. In case your oath is not strong, know this. If this false dragon dies before I command his death, or if he is taken by the witches, you will be found one morning with a dagger in your heart. And should any accident befall me, even if I should die of old age, you will not survive me the month. My Lord Captain Commander, I have sworn to obey. So you have. Come on. See that you remember. Now go, as my Lord Captain Commander commands. This time, Carden's voice was not so steady. The door closed behind the Inquisitor. Niall rubbed his hands together. He felt cold. The dice were spinning with no way of telling the show when they stopped. The last battle truly was coming. Not the Tarman Gaten of legend, with the Dark One breaking free to be faced by the Dragon Reborn. Not that, he was sure. The Aes Sedai of the Age of Legends might have made a hole in the Dark One's prison at Shale Ghoul, but Luce Theron Kinslayer and his 100 companions had sealed it up again. The counterstroke had tainted the male half of the true source forever and driven them mad. And so begun the breaking. But one of those ancient Aes Sedai could do what 10 of the Tarbalan witches of today could not. The seals they had made would hold. Adrian Niall was a man of cold logic, and he had reasoned out how Tarman Gaten would be. Bestial Trolloc hordes rolling south out of the Great Blight, as they had in the Trolloc Wars 2,000 years before, with the Murdral, the Halfmen, leading, and perhaps even new human dreadlords from among the Dark Friends. Humankind, split into nations squabbling among themselves, could not stand against that. But he, Pedron Niall, would unite humankind behind the banners of the Children of the Light. There would be new legends to tell how Pedron Niall had fought Tarman Gaten and won. First, he murmured, loose a rabid lion in the streets. A rabid lion. Niall spun on his heel as a bony little man with a huge beak of a nose slipped from behind one of the hanging banners. There was just a glimpse of a panel swinging shut as the banner fell back against the wall. I showed you that passage for thee, Niall snapped, so you could come when I summoned you without half the fortress knowing. Not so you could listen to my private conversation. Forty made a smooth bow as he crossed the room. Listen, great lord. I would never do such a thing. I only just arrived and could not avoid hearing your final words. No more than that. He wore a half-mocking smile, but it never left his face that Niall had ever seen, even when the fellow had no reason to know anyone was watching. A month before, in the dead of winter, the gangly little man had arrived in Amadisia, ragged and half-frozen, and somehow managed to talk his way through all the layers of guards to Pedron Niall himself. He seemed to know things about events on Tillman Head that were not in Carden's voluminous, obscure reports, or in Byer's tale, or in any other report or rumor that had come to Niall. His name was a lie, of course. The old tongue of Ordif meant wormwood. When Niall challenged him on it, though, all he said was, who we were is lost to all men, and life is bitter. But he was clever. It had been he who helped Niall see the pattern emerging in events. Ordif moved to the table and took up one of the drawings. As he unrolled it enough to reveal the young man's face, his smile deepened to nearly a grimace. Niall was still irritated that the man had come unsummoned. You find a false dragon funny, Ordif? Or does he frighten you? A false dragon, Ordif said softly. Yes, of course it must be. Who else could it be? And he barked a shrill laugh that grated on Niall's nerves. Sometimes Niall thought Ordif was at least half mad. He was clever, mad or not. What do you mean, Ordif? You sound as if you know him. Ordif gave a start, as though he had forgotten the Lord Captain Commander was there. Know him? His name is Randall Thor. He comes from the Two Rivers in the back country of Andor. He is a dark friend so deep in the shadow it would make your soul cringe to know the half. The two rivers. Mused. Someone else mentioned another dark friend from there. Another youth. Strange to think of dark friends coming from a place like that. But truly, they are everywhere. Another great lord, Odie said. From the two rivers. Would that be Matrim Coffin or Perrin Ibarra? They are of an age with him, and close behind in evil. His name was given as Perrin, Niall said, frowning. 3 of them, you say? Nothing comes out of the two rivers but wool and tobacco. I doubt if there is another place near here that is more isolated from the rest of the world. The city, dark friends must to one extent, but they must associate with others. Strangers come from other places, and leaving to take board of what they have seen. But in quiet villages cut off from the world, where few outsiders ever go, what better places? How is it you know the names of 3 dark friends, Odie? Dark friends from the far end of forever. You keep too many secrets, Wormwood, and pull more surprises from your sleeve than a gleeman. How can any man tell all anymore? The little man said smoothly. It would be only prattle until it becomes useful. I would pray this, great lord. This Randall Thor, this dragon, has deep roots in the two rivers. False dragon, Niall said sharply. The other man bowed. Of course, I just spoke myself. Suddenly Niall became aware of the drawing crumpled and torn in Ordie's hands. Even while the man's face remained smooth, except for that sardonic smile, his hands twitched convulsively around the parchment. Stop that, Niall commanded. He snatched the drawing away from Ordie and smoothed it as best he could. I do not have so many likenesses of this man that I can allow them to be destroyed. Much of the drawing was only a smudge, and a rip ran across the young man's breast. But miraculously, the face was untouched. Forgive me, Gringo. Ordie made a deep bow, his smile never slipping. I hate dark friends. Niall studied the face in chalks. Randolph Thor of the Two Rivers. Perhaps I must make plans for the Two Rivers. When the snows clear, perhaps. As the great lord wishes, Ordie said blandly. The grimace on Carden's face as he strode through the halls of the fortress made other men avoid him, though in truth few sought the company of questioners. Servants, hurrying about their tasks, tried to fade into the stone walls, and even men with golden knots of rank on their white cloaks took side corridors when they saw his face. He flung open the door to his rooms and slammed it behind him, feeling none of the usual satisfaction at the fine carpets from Taravan, and Tyr, in lush reds and golds and blues, the beveled mirrors from Ilion, the gold-leaf work on the long, intricately carved table in the middle of the floor. A master craftsman from Lugard had worked nearly a year on that. This time, he barely saw it. Shaban! For once, his body servant did not appear. The man was supposed to be readying the rooms. I'd like to burn you, Shaban. Where are you? A movement caught the corner of his eye, and he turned, ready to shrivel Shaban with his curses. The curses themselves shriveled, as a Murdral took another step toward him with the sinuous grace of a serpent. It was a man in form, no larger than most, but there the resemblance ended. Dead black clothes and cloak, hardly seeming to stir as it moved, made its maggot-white skin appear ever paler, and it had no eyes. That eyeless gaze filled Carden with fear, as it had filled thousands before. Carden stopped to work moisture back into his mouth, to try bringing his voice back down to its normal register. What are you doing here? It still sounded shrill. The halfman's bloodless lips quirked in a smile. Where there's shadow, there may I go. Its voice sounded like a snake rustling through dead leaves. I like to keep a watch on all those who serve me. I serve them. It was no use. With an effort, Carden jerked his eyes away from that smooth expanse of pale, pasty face and turned his back. A shiver ran down his spine, having his back to Myrddraal. Everything was sharp in the mirror on the wall in front of him. Everything but the half-man. The Myrddraal was an indistinct blur, hardly soothing to look at, but better than moving and stare. A little strength returned to Carden's voice. I serve the... He cut off, suddenly aware of where he was. In the heart of the Fortress of the Light. The rumor of a whisper of the words he was about to say would have given him to the hand of the light. The lowest of the children would strike him down on the spot if he heard. He was alone, except for the Myrddraal and perhaps Charbon. Where is that cursed man? It would be good to have someone to share the half-man's stare, even if the other would have to be disposed of afterwards. But still, he lowered his voice. I serve the great as you do. If you wish to see it so. The Myrddraal laughed, a sound that made Carden's bones shiver. Still, I will not.
Hey, fire. Just already taking some hits of my dab pen.
I was commanded here by word of the Lord Captain Commander. The Myrddraal grated. Your Lord Captain Commander's words are dung. You are commanded to find the human called Randall Thor and kill him. That, before all else, above all else. Why are you not obeying? Carden took a deep breath. That gaze on his back felt like a knife blade grating along his spine. Things have changed. Some matters are not as much in my control as they were. A harsh, scraping noise jerked his head around. The Myrddraal was drawing a hand across the tabletop, and thin tendrils of wood curled away from his fingertips. Nothing has changed, Wanda. You forswore your oaths to the light and swore new oaths. And those oaths you will obey. Carden stared at the gouges marring the polished wood and swallowed hard. I don't understand. Why is it suddenly so important to kill him? I thought the great Lord of the Dark meant to use him. You question me? I shall take your tongue. It is not your part to question or to understand. It is your part to obey. You will give dogs lessons in obedience. You understand that? Heel, dog, and obey your master. Anger wormed its way through the fear, and Carden's hand groped at his side, but his sword was not there. It lay in the next room now, where he had left it on going to attend Pt.1. The Myrddraal moved faster than a striking viper. Carden opened his mouth to scream as its hand closed on his wrist in a crushing grip. Bones grated together, sending jolts of agony up his arm. The scream never left his mouth, though, for the half-man's other hand gripped his chin and forced his jaws shut. His heels rose up, and then his toes left the floor. Grunting and gurgling, he dangled in the Myrddraal's grasp. Hear me, human. You will find this youth and kill him as quickly as possible. Do not think you can dissemble. There are others of your children who will tell me if you turn aside in your purpose. But I will give you this to encourage you. If this Randall Thor is not dead in a month, I will take one of your blood. A son, a daughter, a sister, an uncle. You will not know who until the chosen has died screaming. If he lives another month, I will take another, and then another, and another. When there is no one of your blood living except yourself, if he still lives, I will take you to Shale Ghul itself. It's mine. You will be years in dying, human. You understand me now? Carden made a sound, half groan, half whimper. He thought his neck was going to break. With a snarl, the Myrddraal hurled him across the room. Carden slammed against the far wall and slid to the rug, stunned. Face down, he lay fighting for breath. Do you understand me, human? I hear and obey. Carden managed into the carpet. There was no answer. He turned his head, wincing at the pain in his neck. The room was empty except for him. Half-men rode shadows like horses, so the legends said. When they turned sideways, they disappeared. No wall could keep them out. Carden wanted to weep. He levered
I'm back
himself up,
home now,
pushing
so
the jolt of pain from his wrist. The door opened and
it's
Sharp
definitely
hurried
gonna
in, a plump
sleep
man with a
good
basket
tonight.
in his arms. He stopped to stare at Carden. Master, are you all right?
Well, I still
Forgive me
slept
for not
good
being
at
here,
my
Master,
mom's,
but I went
but
to buy fruits for you. With his good hand, Carden
it's
struck the basket from Sharpon's hands, sending withered winter apples
not
rolling
the
across the
same.
carpets, and backhanded the man across the
It's not the
face.
same sleep. I still slept good
Forgive
there,
me,
but
Master, Sharpon
it's not the
whispered.
same as
Fetch me paper
sleeping
and pen
here.
and ink, Carden snarled. Hurry, fool! I must send orders. Which? As Sharpon scurried to obey, Carden stared at the gouges in the tabletop and shivered. Chapter 1. The wheel of time turns, and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth comes again. In one age,
this
called the
one's
third age by some,
almost
an
gone.
age yet to come, an age long past, a wind rose in the mountains of mist. The wind was not the beginning. There are neither beginnings nor endings to the turning of the wheel of time, but it was a beginning. Down long valleys the wind swept. Valleys blue with morning mist hanging in the air, some forested with evergreens, some bare where grasses and wildflowers would soon spring up. It howled across half-buried ruins and broken monuments, all as forgotten as those who had built them. It moaned in the passes, weather-worn cuts between peaks capped with snow that never melted. Thick clouds clung to the mountaintops so that snow and white billows seemed warm. In the lowlands, winter was going or gone, yet here in the heights it held a while, quilting the mountainsides with broad white patches. Only evergreens clung to leaf or needle. All other branches stood bare, brown or gray against the rock and not yet quickened ground. There was no sound but the crisp rush of wind over snow and stone. The land seemed to be waiting for something to burst. Sitting his horse just inside a thicket of leatherleaf and pine, Baron Ibarra shivered and tugged his fur-lined cloak closer, as close as he could, with a longbow in one hand and a great half-moon axe at his belt. It was a good axe of cold steel. Baron had pumped the bellows the day Master Luhan had made it. The wind jerked at his cloak, pulling the hood back from his shaggy curls.
Hell yeah, fire.
He wiggled his
It's
toes
always
in his
good
boots for
wearing some
warmth,
good
shifted on his
shoes.
high-cantled saddle. But his mind was not really on the cold. Eyeing his 5 companions, he wondered if they too felt it. Not the waiting they had been sent there for, but something more. Stepper, his horse, shifted and tossed his head. He had named the dun stallion for his quick feet, but now Stepper seemed to feel his rider's irritation and impatience. I'm tired of all this waiting, all this
Hell yeah,
sitting
can't go
on
wrong some
bulges of Chinese
DCs.
tongs.
Those are always good
Burn the eyes
shoes.
to die. When will it end? He sniffed the wind without thinking. The smell of horse predominated, and of men and men's sweat. A rabbit had gone through those trees not long since, fear powering its run, but the fox on its trail had not killed there.
Hey, Babylon, how you
He
doing?
realized what he was doing and stopped it. You'd think I would get a stuffed nose with all this wind. He almost wished
Hope you're
he could
doing
have
good, Babylon.
and I wouldn't let Moraine do anything about it either. Something tickled the back of his mind. He refused to acknowledge it. He did not mention his feeling to his companions. The other 5 men sat their saddles, short horse bows at the ready, eyes searching the sky above as well as the thinly treed slopes below. They seemed unperturbed by the wind flaring their cloaks out like banners. A 2-handed sword hilt stuck up above each man's shoulder through a slit in his cloak. The sight of their bare heads, shaven except for topknots, made Perrin feel colder. For them, this weather was already well into spring. All softness had been hammered out of them at a harder forge than he had ever known. They were Shinarans from the borderlands up along the Great Blight, where Trolloc raids could come in any night, and even a merchant or a farmer might well have to take up sword or bow. And these men were no farmers, but soldiers almost from birth. He sometimes wondered at the way they deferred to him and followed his lead.
Doing good out there
It
tonight.
was as if they thought he had some
I'm
special
about to
right, some knowledge.
Start
given from
round
them.
one.
Maybe it's just my friends, he thought wryly. They were not as tall as he, nor as big. Years as a blacksmith's apprentice had given him arms and shoulders to make two of most men's. But he had begun shaving every day to stop their jokes about his youth. Friendly jokes, but still jokes. He would not have them start again because he spoke of a feeling. With a start, Perrin reminded himself that he was supposed to be keeping watch, too. Checking the arrow nocked to his longbow, he peered down the valley running off to the west, widening as it fell away. The ground streaked with broad, twisted ribbons of snow, remnants of winter. Most of the scattered trees down there still clothed the sky with stark winter branches, but enough evergreens, pine and leatherleaf, fir and mountain holly, even a few towering greenwoods, stood on the slopes and the valley floor to give cover for anyone who knew how to use it. But no one would be there without a special purpose. The mines were all far to the south, or even further north. Most people thought there was ill luck in the mountains of mist, and few entered them who could avoid it. Aaron's eyes glittered like burnished gold. The tickling became an itch. No. He could push the itch aside, but the expectation would not go. As if he teetered on a brink, as if everything teetered. He wondered whether something unpleasant lay in the mountains around them. There was a way to know, perhaps. In places like this, where men seldom came, there were almost always wolves. He crushed the thought before it had a chance to burn. Better to wonder. Better than that. Their numbers were not many, but they had scouts. If there was anything out there, the Outriders would find it. This is my forge. I'll tend it, and let them tend theirs. He could see further than the others, so he was the first to spot the rider coming from the direction of Tarabon. Even to him, the rider was only a spot of bright colors on horseback, winding its way through the trees in the distance, now seen, now hidden. A piebald horse, he thought, and not before time. He opened his mouth to announce her. It would be a woman. Each rider before had been, when Massima suddenly muttered, "Raven," like a curse. Perrin jerked his head out. A big black bird was quartering over the treetops no more than 100 paces away. Its quarry might have been carrion dead in the snow or some small animal, yet Perrin could not take the chance. It did not seem to have seen them, but the oncoming rider would soon be in its sight. Even as he spotted the raven, his bow came up and he drew. Fletchings to cheek, to ear. One smooth motion. He was dimly aware, but his attention was all on the black bird. Suddenly it cartwheeled in a shower of midnight feathers as his arrow found it. In the sky, as two more arrows streaked through the place where it had been. Bows half drawn, the other Shinarans searched the sky to see if it had a companion. Does it have to report? Perrin asked softly. Or does he see what it sees? He had not meant anyone to hear, but Ragan, the youngest of the Shinarans, less than 10 years his elder, answered as he fitted another arrow to his short bow. It has to report. To a half-man, usually. In the borderlands, there was a bounty of ravens. No one there ever dared assume any raven was just a bird. Like, if Heartsbane saw what the ravens
had
saw,
a good day out
we
there.
would all have been dead before he reached the mountains. Ragan's voice was easy. It was a matter of every day to a Shinaran soldier. Perrin shivered, not from the cold, and in the back of his head, something snarled a challenge to the death. Heartsbane. Different names in different lands. Soulsbane and Heartfang. Lord of the Grave and Lord of the Twilight. And everywhere Father of Lies and the Dark One. All to avoid giving him his true name and drawing his attention. The Dark One often used ravens and crows, rats in cities. Aaron drew another broadhead arrow from the quiver on his hip that balanced the axe on the other side. That may be big as a club, Ragan said admiringly, with a glance at Aaron's bow. But it can shoot. I would hate to see what it could do to a man in armor. The Shinarans wore only light mail now, under their plain coats, but usually they fought in armor, man and horse alike. Too long for horseback, Masima sneered. The triangular scar on his dark cheek twisted his contemptuous grin even more. A good breastplate will stop even a pile arrow, except at close range. And if your first shot fails, the man you're shooting at will carve your guts out. That is just it, Masima. Ragan relaxed a bit as the sky remained empty. The raven must have been alone. With this Two Rivers bow, I'll wager you don't have to be so close. Masima opened his mouth. You two stop flapping your bloody tongues, Uno snapped. With a long scar down the left side of his face and that eye gone, his features were hard, even for a Shinaran. He had acquired a painted eye patch on their way into the mountains during the autumn. A permanently frowning eye and a fiery red did nothing to make his stare easier to face. If you can't keep your bloody minds on the bloody task at hand, I'll see if extra flaming guard duty tonight will bloody settle you. Ragan and Masima subsided under his stare. He gave them a last scowl that faded as he turned to Perrin. Do you see anything yet? His tone was a little gruffer than he might have used with a commander put over him by the King of Shinar or the Lord of Faldara. Yet there was something in it of readiness to do whatever Perrin suggested. The Shinarans knew how far he could see, but they seemed to take it as a matter of course. That and the color of his eyes as well. They did not know everything, not by half, but they accepted him as he was, as they thought he was. They seemed to accept everything and anything. The world was changing, they said. Everything spun on the wheels of chance and change. If a man had eyes a color no man's eyes had ever been, what did it matter now? She's coming, Perrin said. You should just see her now. There. He pointed, and Uno strained forward, his one real eye squinting. Then finally nodded doubtfully. There's bloody something moving down there. Some of the others nodded and murmured too. Uno glared at them, and they went back to studying the sky and the mountains. Suddenly Perrin realized what the bright colors on the distant rider meant. A vivid green skirt peeking out beneath a bright red cloak. She's one of the traveling people, he said, startled. No one else he had ever heard of dressed in such brilliant colors and odd combinations, not by choice. The women they had sometimes met and guided even deeper into the mountains included every sort. A beggar woman in rags struggling afoot through a snowstorm. A merchant by herself leading a string of laden pack horses. A lady in silks and fine furs with red tasseled reins on her palfrey and gold worked on her saddle. The beggar departed with a purse of silver, more than Perrin thought they could afford to give, until the lady left an even fatter purse of gold. Women from every station in life, all alone, from Taraban and Giladan, and even Amadisia. But he had never expected to see one of the Tuathalan. A bloody tinker, Uno exclaimed. The others echoed his surprise. Ragan's top knot waved as he shook his head. A tinker wouldn't be mixed in this. Either she's not a tinker, or she is not the one we are supposed to meet. Tinkers, Masima growled. Useless cowards. Uno's eye narrowed until it looked like the pritchel hole of an anvil. With the red eye painted on his patch, he gave him a villainous look. Cowards, Masima, he said softly. If you were a woman, would you have the flaming nerve to ride up here, alone and bloody unarmed? There was no doubt she would be unarmed if she was of the Tuathalan. Masima kept his mouth shut, but the scar on his cheek stood out tight and pale. Burn me if I would, Ragan said, and burn me if you would either, Masima. Masima hitched at his cloak and ostentatiously searched the sky. Uno snorted. The light center of the flaming carrion eater was flaming alone, he muttered. Slowly the shaggy brown and white mare meandered closer, picking away along the clear ground between broad snowbanks. Once the brightly clad woman stopped to peer at something on the ground, then tugged the cowl of her cloak further over her head, and heeled her mount forward in a slow walk. A raven, Aaron thought. Stop looking at that bird and come on, woman. Maybe you've brought the word that finally takes us out of here. If Moraine means to let us leave before spring, burn her. For a moment, he was not sure whether he meant the Aes Sedai or the Tinker Woman, who seemed to be taking her own time. If she kept on as she was, the woman would pass a good 30 paces to one side of the thicket. With her eyes fixed on where her piebald stepped, she gave no sign that she had seen them among the trees. Perrin nudged the stallion's flanks with his heels, and the dun leaped ahead, sending up sprays of snow with his hooves. Behind him, Uno quietly gave the command, "Ahoy!" Stepper was halfway to it before she seemed to become aware of them, and then she jerked her mare to a halt with a start. She watched as they formed an arc centered on her. Embroidery of eye-wrenching blue and the pattern called a Tyrant maze made her red cloak even more garish. She was not young. Gray showed thick in her hair, where it was not hidden by her cowl, but her face had few lines, other than the disapproving frown she ran over their weapons. If she was alarmed at meeting armed men in the heart of mountain wilderness, though, she gave no sign. Her hands rested easily on the high pommel of her worn but well-kept saddle, and she did not smell afraid. "Stop that," Perrin told himself. He made his voice soft so as not to frighten her. "My name is Perrin, good mistress. If you need help, I'll do what I can. If not, go with the light. But unless the Pt.1 have changed their ways, you are far from your way." She studied them a moment more before speaking. There was a gentleness in her dark eyes, not surprising in one of the traveling people. "I seek a woman." The skip was small, but it was there. She sought not any woman, but an Aes Sedai. "Does she have a name, good mistress?" Perrin asked. He had done this too many times in the last few months to need her reply, but iron was spoiled for want of care. "She is called... Sometimes she is called Moraine. My name is Leah." Perrin nodded. "We will take you to her, Mistress Leah. We have warm fires, and with luck, something hot to eat." But he did not lift his reins immediately. "How did you find us?" He had asked before, each time Moraine sent him out to wait at a spot she named, for a woman she knew would come. The answer would be the same as it always was, but he had to ask. Leah shrugged and answered hesitantly. "I knew that if I came this way, someone would find me and take me to her. I just knew. I have news for her." Perrin did not ask what news. The women gave the information they brought only to Moraine. "And the Aes Sedai tells us what she chooses," he thought. Aes Sedai never lied. But it was said that the truth an Aes Sedai told you was not always the truth you thought it was. Too late for qualms now, isn't it? "This way, Mistress Leah," he said, gesturing up the mountain. The Shienarans, with Uno at their head, fell in behind Perrin and Leah as they began to climb. The Borderlanders still studied the sky as much as the land, and the last two kept a special watch on their back trail. For a time they rode in silence except for the sound the horses' hooves made, sometimes crunching through old snow crust, sometimes sending rocks clattering as they crossed bare stretches. Now and again, Leah cast glances at Perrin, at his bow, his axe, his face. But she did not speak. He shifted uncomfortably under the scrutiny and avoided looking at her. He always tried to give strangers as little chance to notice his eyes as he could manage. Finally he said, "I was surprised to see one of the traveling people believing as you do. It is possible to oppose evil without doing violence." Her voice held the simplicity of someone stating an obvious truth. Perrin grunted sourly, then immediately muttered an apology. "What it were as you say, Mistress Leah. Violence harms the doer as much as the victim," Leah said placidly. "That is why we flee those who harm us, to save them from harm to themselves, as much for our own safety. If we do violence to oppose evil, Soon we would be no different from what we struggle against. It is with the strength of our belief that we fight the shadow. Baron could not help snorting. Mistress, I hope you never have to face Trollocs with the strength of your belief. The strength of their swords will cut you down where you stand. It is better to die than to... She began, but anger made him speak right over her. Anger that she just would not see. Anger that she really would die, rather than harm anyone, no matter how evil. If you run, they will hunt you and kill you and eat your corpse. Or they might not wait till it is a corpse. Either way, you are dead, and it's evil that is won. And there are men just as cruel. Dark friends and others. More others than I would have believed even a year ago. Let the White Cloaks decide you tinkers don't walk in the light, and see how many of you the strength of your belief can keep alive. She gave him a penetrating look. And yet you are not happy with your weapons. How did she know that? He shook his head irritably, shaggy hair swaying. The Creator made the world, he muttered. Not I.
Right. I pretty much watch
I
everything
must
on
live
me
the best
too.
I can in the world.
Then again, I smoke from when I wake up till I go to
So
sleep.
sad, she said softly. Why so sad? I should be watching, not talking, he said curtly. You won't thank me if I get you lost. He heel-stepped her forward enough to cut off any further conversation, but he could feel her looking at him. Sad. I'm not sad, just... I don't know. There ought to be a better way, that's all. The itching tickle came again at the back of his head. When absorbed in ignoring Leah's eyes on his back, he ignored that too. Over the slope of the mountain and down they rode, across a forested valley with a broad stream running cold along its bottom, knee-deep on the horses. In the distance, the side of a mountain had been carved into the semblance of two towering forms. A man and a woman, Aaron thought they might be, though wind and rain had long since made that uncertain. Even Moraine claimed to be unsure who they were supposed to be, or when the granite had been cut. Bricklebacks and small trout darted away from the horses' hooves, silver flashes in the clear water. A deer raised its head from browsing, hesitated as the party rode up out of the stream, then bounded off into the trees, and a large mountain cat, gray-striped and spotted with black, seemed to rise out of the ground, frustrated in its stalk. It eyed the horses a moment, and with a lash of its tail vanished after the deer. But there was little life visible in the mountains yet. Only a handful of birds perched on limbs or pecked at the ground where the snow had melted. More would return to the heights in a few weeks, but not yet. They saw no other ravens. It was late afternoon by the time Perrin led them between two steep-sloped mountains, snowy peaks as ever wrapped in cloud, and turned up a smaller stream that splashed downward over gray stones in a series of tiny waterfalls. A bird called in the trees, and another answered it from ahead. Perrin smiled. Bluefinch calls.
Hey, Soy, how you doing?
No one rode this way without being seen. He rubbed his nose and did not look at the tree the first bird had called from. Their path narrowed as they rode up through scrubby leatherleaf and a few gnarled
Good to
mountain
see you.
oaks.
Good to see
The
everyone
ground
here.
level enough to ride beside the stream became barely wider than a man on horseback. The stream itself, no more than a man could step across. Perrin heard Leah behind him, murmuring to herself. When he looked over his shoulder, she was casting worried glances up the steep slope to either side. Scattered trees perched precariously above them. It appeared impossible they would not fall. The Shinarans rode easily, at last beginning to relax. Abruptly, a deep oval bowl between the mountains opened out before them, its sides steep, but not nearly so precipitous as the narrow passage. The stream rose from a small spring at its far end. Perrin's sharp eyes picked out a man with the top-knot of a Shinaran up in the limbs of an oak to his left. Had a red-winged jay called instead of a bluefinch, he would not have been alone. And the way in would not have been so easy. A handful of men could hold that passage against an army. If an army came, they would have to. Among the trees around the bowl stood log huts, not readily visible, so that those gathered around the cook fires at the bottom of the bowl seemed at first to be without shelter. There were fewer than a dozen in sight, and not many more out of sight, Aaron knew. Most of them looked around at the sound of horses, and some waved. The bowl seemed filled with the smells of men and horses, of cooking and burning wood. A long white banner hung limply from a tall pole near them. One form, at least half against sat on a log and wrote in a book that was small in its huge height. That one's attention never wavered, even when the only other person without a top-knot shouted, "So you found her, did you? I thought you'd be gone the night this time." It was a young woman's voice, but she wore a boy's coat and breeches and had her hair cut short. The wind swirled into the bowl, making cloaks flap and rippling the banner out to its full length. For a moment, the creature on it seemed to ride the wind. A four-legged serpent, scaled and scarlet, golden maned like a lion, each tipped with 5 golden claws. A banner of legend. A banner most men would not know if they saw it, but would fear when they learned its name. Aaron waved a hand that took it all in as he led the way down into the bowl. "Welcome to the camp of the Dragon Reborn, Leah." Chapter 2. Thaideen. Face expressionless, the Tuathawan woman stared at the banner as it drooped again, then turned her attention to those around the fire, especially the one reading it, the one half again as tall as Perrin and twice as big. "You have an Ogier with you. I would not have thought." She shook her head. "Where is Moraine Sedai?" It seemed the dragon banner might as well not exist as far as she was concerned. Perrin gestured toward the rough hut that stood furthest up the slope at the far end of the bowl. With walls and sloping roof of unpeeled logs, it was the largest, though not very big at that. Perhaps just barely large enough to be called a cabin rather than a hut. "That one is hers. Hers and Lan's. He is her warder. When you have had something hot to drink..." "No, I must speak to Moraine." He was not surprised. All the women who came insisted on speaking to Moraine immediately and alone. The news that Moraine chose to share with the rest of them did not always seem very important, but the women held the intensity of a hunter stalking the last rabbit in the world for his starving family. The half-frozen old beggar woman had refused blankets and a plate of hot stew, and tramped up to Moraine's hut, barefoot in still falling snow. Leah slid from her saddle and handed the reins up to Perrin. "Will you see that she is fed?" She patted the piebald mare's nose. "Tisa is not used to carrying me over such rugged country." "Fodder is scarce still," Perrin told her, "but she'll have what we can give her." Leah nodded and went hurrying away up the slope without another word, holding her bright green skirts up, a blue embroidered red cloak swaying behind her. Perrin swung down from his saddle, exchanging a few words with the men who came from the fires to take the horses. He gave his bow to the one who took Stepper. No, except for one raven, they had seen nothing but the mountains and the Tuathawan woman. Yes, the raven was dead. No, she had told them nothing of what was happening outside the mountains. No, he had no idea whether they would be leaving soon. Forever.
I'll be right back.
Moraine had kept them there all winter. The Shienarans did not think she gave the orders, not here. But Perrin knew that Aes Sedai somehow always seemed to get their way, especially Moraine. Once the horses were led away to the rude log stable, the riders went to warm themselves. Perrin tossed his cloak back over his shoulders and held his hands out to the flames gratefully. The big kettle, Verlon wort by the look of it, gave off smells that had been making his mouth water for some time already. Someone had been lucky hunting today, it seemed. Lumpy roots circled another fire close by, giving off an aroma faintly like turnips as they roasted. He wrinkled his nose and concentrated on the stew. More and more he wanted meat above anything else. The woman in men's clothes was peering toward Leah, who was just disappearing into Moraine's hut. "What do you see, man?" he asked. She came to stand beside him, her dark eyes troubled. He did not understand why she insisted on breeches instead of skirts. Perhaps it was because he knew her, But he could not see how anyone could look at her and see a too handsome youth instead of a pretty young woman. The Tinker Woman is going to die, she said softly, eyeing the others near the fires. None was close enough to hear. He was still thinking of Leah's gentle face. I'm right. Tinkers never harm anyone. He felt cold despite the warmth of the fire. Burn me, I wish I'd never asked. Even the few Aes Sedai who knew of it did not understand what men did. Sometimes she saw images and auras surrounding people. Sometimes she even knew what they meant. Masuto came to stir the stew with a long wooden spoon. The Shinaran eyed them, then laid a finger alongside his long nose and grinned widely before he left. Blood and ashes, Min muttered. He's probably decided we are sweethearts murmuring to each other by the fire. Are you sure? Baron asked. She raised her eyebrows at him, and he hastily added, How about Leah? Is that her name? I wish I didn't know. It always makes it worse, knowing and not being able to. Baron, I saw her own face floating over her shoulder, covered in blood, eyes staring. It's never any clearer than that. She shivered and rubbed her hands together briskly. Right, but I wish I saw more happy things. All the happy things seem to have gone away. He opened his mouth to suggest warning Leah, then closed it again. There was never any doubt about what Min saw and knew, for good or bad. If she was certain, it happened. Blood on her face, he wondered. Does that mean she'll die by violence? He winced that he said it so easily. But what can I do? If I tell Leah, if I make her believe somehow, she'll live her last days in fear, and it will change nothing. Min gave a short nod. If she's going to die by violence, it could mean an attack on the camp. But there were scouts out every day, and guards set day and night, and Moraine had the camp warded, so she said. No creature of the Dark One would see it unless he walked right into it. He thought of the wolves. No. The scouts would find anyone or anything trying to approach the camp. It's a long way back to the people, he said half to himself. Tinkers wouldn't have brought their wagons any further than the foothills. Anything could happen between here and there. Min nodded sadly. And there aren't enough of us to spare even one guard for her, even if it would do any good. She had told him. She had tried warning people about bad things when, at 6 or 7, she had first realized not everyone could see what she saw. She would not say more, but he had the impression that her warnings had only made matters worse when they were believed at all. It took some doing to believe in Min's viewings until you had proof. When? He said. The word was cold in his ears and hard as tool steel. I can't do anything about Leah, but maybe I can figure out whether we're going to be attacked. As soon as the word was out of his mouth, she threw up her hands. She kept her voice down, though. It isn't like that. I can never tell when something is going to happen. I only know it will. If I even know what I see means. You don't understand. The seeing doesn't come when I want it to, and neither does knowing. It just happens, and sometimes I know. Something, a little bit. It just happens. He tried to get a soothing word in, but she was letting it all out in a flood he could not stem. I can see things around a man one day and not the next, or the other way around. Most of the time I don't see anything around anyone. Aes Sedai always have images around them, of course, and warders, though it's always harder to say what it means with them than with anyone else. She gave Perrin a searching look, half squinting. A few others always do, too. Don't tell me what you see when you look at me, he said harshly, then shrugged his heavy shoulders. Even as a child, he had been bigger than most of the others, and he had quickly learned how easy it was to hurt people by accident when you were bigger than they. It had made him cautious and careful, and regretful of his anger when he let it show. I am sorry, Min. I shouldn't have snapped at you. I did not mean to hurt you. She gave him a surprised look. You didn't hurt me. Blessed few people want to know what I see. The light knows I would not, if it were someone else who could do it. Even the Aes Sedai had never heard of anyone else who had her gift. Gift was how they saw it, even if she did not. It's just that I wish there was something I could do about Leah, I couldn't stand it the way you do, knowing and not able to do anything. Strange, she said softly. How you seem to care so much about the Duatho. They are utterly peaceful, and I always see violence around. He turned his head away, and she cut off abruptly.
Duathoan?
Came a rumbling voice like a huge bumblebee.
What about the Duathoan?
The Ogier came to join them at the fire, marking his place in his book with a finger the size of a large sausage. A thin streamer of tobacco smoke rose from the pipe in his other hand. His high-necked coat of dark brown wool buttoned up to the neck and flared at the knee over turned-down boot tops. Aaron stood hardly as high as his chest. Loyal's face had frightened more than one person, with his nose broad enough almost to be called a snout and his too wide mouth. His eyes were the size of saucers, with thick eyebrows that dangled like mustaches almost to his cheeks, and his ears poked up through long hair and tufted points. Some who had never seen an Ogier took him for a Trolloc, though Trollocs were as much legend to most of them as Ogier. Loyal's wide smile wavered, and his eyes blinked as he became aware of having interrupted them. Perrin wondered how anyone could be frightened of the Ogier for long. In some of the old stories, called them fierce and implacable as enemies. He could not believe it. Ogier were enemies to no one. Min told Loyal of Leah's arrival, but not of what she had seen. She was usually close-mouthed about these seeings, especially when they were bad. Instead, she added, "You should know how I feel, Loyal, suddenly caught up by Aes Sedai and these two rivers folk." Loyal made a non-committal sound, but Min seemed to take it for agreement. "Yes," she said emphatically. "There I was, living my life in Verlon as I liked it, and suddenly I was grabbed up by the scruff of the neck and jerked off to the light knows where. Well, I might as well have been. My life has not been my own since I met Moraine, and these two rivers farm boys." She rolled her eyes at Perrin, a wry twist to her mouth. "All I wanted was to live as I pleased, fall in love with the man I chose." Her cheeks reddened suddenly, and she cleared her throat. "I mean to say, what is wrong with wanting to live your life without all this upheaval?"
ta'veren,
Loyal began. Perrin waved at him to stop, but the Ogier could seldom be slowed, much less stopped, when one of his enthusiasms had him in its grip. He was accounted extremely hasty by the Ogier way of looking at things. Loyal pushed his book into a coat pocket and went on, gesturing with his pipe.
all of us, all of our lives, affect the lives of others. As the wheel of time weaves us into the pattern, the life thread of each of us pulls and tugs at the life threads around us. ta'veren are the same, only much, much more so. They tug at the entire pattern, for a time at least, forcing it to shape around them. The closer you are to them, the more you are affected personally. It's said that if you were in the same room with utter Hawkwind, you could feel the pattern rearranging itself. I don't know how that is true, but I've read that it was. But it doesn't only work one way. The Viren themselves are woven to a tighter line than the rest of us, with fewer choices.
Perrin grimaced. Bloody few of the ones that matter. Min tossed her head. "I just wish they didn't have to be so bloody ta'veren all the time. ta'veren tugging on one side and Aes Sedai meddling on the other? What chance does a woman have?" Loyal shrugged.
Very little, I suppose, as long as she stays close to ta'veren.
"As if I had a choice," Min growled.
It was your good fortune, or misfortune if you see it that way, to fall in with not one, but three ta'veren. Rand, Matt, and Perrin. I myself counted very good fortune, and would even if they weren't my friends. I think I might even...
The Ogier looked at them, suddenly shy, his ears twitching.
Promise you will not laugh. I think I might write a book about it. I have been taking notes.
Min smiled, a friendly smile, and Loyal's ears pricked back up again. "That's wonderful," she told him. "But some of us feel as if we're being danced about like puppets by these ta'veren." "I didn't ask for it," Perrin burst out. "I did not ask for it." She ignored him. "Is that what happened to you, Loyal? Is that why you travel with Moraine? I know you Ogier almost never. Did one of these Taviran tug you along with him? Loyal became engrossed in the study of his pipe.
I just wanted to see the groves the Ogier planted, he muttered. Just to see the groves.
He glanced at Perrin as if asking for help, but Perrin only grinned. Nails onto your head. He did not know all of it, but he did know Loyal had run away. He was 90 years old, but not yet old enough by Ogier standards to leave the steading. Going outside, they called it, without the permission of the elders. Ogier lived a very long time, as humans saw things. Loyal said the elders would not be best pleased when they put their hands on him again. He seemed intent on putting that moment off as long as possible. There was a stir among the Shinarans, men getting to their feet. Rand was coming out of Moraine's hut. Even at that distance, Perrin could make him out clearly, a young man with reddish hair and gray eyes. He was of an age with Perrin, and would stand half a head taller if they were side by side, though Rand was more slender, if still broad across the shoulders. Embroidered golden thorns ran up the sleeves of his high-collared red coat, and on the breast of his dark cloak stood the same creature as on the banner, the four-legged serpent with the golden mane. Rand and he had grown up together as friends. Are we still friends? Can we be now? The Shinarans bowed as one, heads held up but hands to knees. Lord Dragon, Uno called. We stand ready. Honor to serve. Uno, who could hardly say a sentence without a curse, spoke now with the deepest respect. The others echoed him. Honor to serve. Masima, who saw ill in everything, and whose eyes now shone with utter devotion. Ragan, all of them awaiting a command, if it were Rand's pleasure to give one. From the slope, Rand stared down at them a moment, then turned and disappeared into the trees. He has been arguing with Moraine again, Min said quietly. All day this time. Perrin was not surprised, yet he still felt a small shock. Arguing with an Aes Sedai. All the childhood tales came back to him. Aes Sedai, who made thrones and nations dance to their hidden strings. Aes Sedai, whose gift always had a hook in it, whose price was always smaller than you could believe, yet always turned out to be greater than you could imagine. Aes Sedai, whose anger could break the ground and summon lightning. Some of the stories were untrue, he knew now, and at the same time they did not tell the half. I had better go to him, he said. After they argue, he always needs someone to talk to. And aside from Moraine and Lan, there were only the three of them, Min, Loyal, and him, who did not stare at Rand as if he stood above kings. And of the three, only Perrin knew him from before. He strode up the slope, pausing only to glance at the closed door of Moraine's hut. Leah would be in there, and Lan. The warder seldom let himself get far from the Aes Sedai's side. Rand's much smaller hut was a little lower down, well hidden in the trees, away from all the rest. He had tried living down among the other men, but their constant awe drove him off. He kept to himself now, too much to himself to Perrin's thinking, but he knew Rand was not headed to his hut now. Perrin hurried on to where one side of the bowl-shaped valley suddenly became
I'm still working on round
50
one.
paces high and smooth, except for the tough brush clinging tenaciously here and there. He knew exactly where a crack in the gray wall lay, an opening hardly wider than his shoulders. With only a ribbon of late afternoon light overhead, it was like walking down a tunnel. Half a mile the crack ran, abruptly opening out into a narrow vale, less than a mile long. Its floor covered with rocks and boulders, even the steep slopes were thickly forested with tall leatherleaf and pine and fir. Long shadows stretched away from the sun sitting on the mountaintops. The walls of this place were unbroken, save for the crack, and as steep as if a giant axe had buried itself in the mountains. It could be even more easily defended by a few than the bowl, but it had neither stream nor spring. No one went there, except Rand, after he argued with Moraine. Rand stood not far from the entrance, leaning against the rough trunk of a leatherleaf, staring at the palms of his hands. Perrin knew that on each there was a heron, branded into the flesh. Rand did not move when Perrin's boot scraped on stone. Suddenly, Rand began to recite softly, never looking up from his hands. Twice and twice shall he be marked, twice to live and twice to die. Once the heron to set his path, twice the heron to name him true. Once the dragon for remembrance lost, twice the dragon for the price he must pay. With a shudder, he tucked his hands under his arms. But no dragons yet, he chuckled roughly. Not yet. For a moment, Perrin simply looked at him. A man who could channel the one power. A man doomed to go mad from the taint on Saidin, the male half of the true source, and certain to destroy everything around him in his madness. A man, a thing, everyone was taught to loathe and fear from childhood. Only, it was hard to stop seeing the boy he had grown up with. How do you just stop being somebody's friend? Perrin chose a small boulder with a flat top and sat waiting. After a while, Rand turned his head to look at him. Do you think Matt is all right? He looked so sick the last time I saw him. He must be all right by now. He should be in Tarvalin by now. They'll heal him there. And Nynaeve and Egwene will keep him out of trouble. Egwene and Nynaeve, Rand and Matt and Perrin. All five from Emmons Field and the Two Rivers. Few people had come into the Two Rivers from outside, except for occasional peddlers and merchants once a year to buy wool and tobacco. Almost no one had ever left. Until the wheel chose out its Taviran, 5 simple country folk could stay where they were no longer. Could be what they had been no longer. Rand nodded and was silent. Lately, Perrin said, I find myself wishing I was still a blacksmith. Do you wish you were still just a shepherd? Duty, Rand muttered. Death is lighter than a feather, duty heavier than a mountain. That's what they say in Shinar. The Dark One is stirring, the last battle is coming, and the Dragon Reborn has to face the Dark One in the last battle, or the shadow will cover everything. The wheel of time broken. Every age remade in the Dark One's image. There's only me. He began to laugh mirthlessly, his shoulders shaking. I have the duty because there isn't anybody else now, is there? Perrin shifted uneasily. The laughter had a raw edge that made his skin crawl. I understand you were arguing with Moraine again. The same thing? Rand drew a deep, ragged breath. Don't we always argue about the same thing? They're down there, on Almoth Plain, and the light alone knows where else. Hundreds of them, thousands. They declared for the Dragon Reborn because I raised that banner. Because I let myself be called the Dragon. Because I could see no other choice. And they're dying. Fighting, searching, and praying for the man who's supposed to lead them. Dying. And I sit here safe in the mountains all winter. I owe them something. You think I like it? Perrin swung his head in irritation. You take whatever she says to you, Rand grated. You never stand up to her. Much good it has done you standing up to her. You have argued all winter, and we have sat here like lumps all winter. Because she is right. Rand laughed again, that chilling laugh. The light burned me, she is right. They are all split up into little groups all over the plain, all across Taraban and Ara Daman. If I join any one of them, the White Cloaks and the Domani army and the Tarabaners will be on top of them like a duck on a beetle. Perrin almost laughed himself in confusion. If you agree with her, why in the light do you argue all the time? Because I have to do something, or I'll burst like a rotted melon. Do what? If you listen to what she says, Rand gave him no chance to say they would sit there forever. Moraine says, Rand jerked erect, squeezing his head between his hands. Moraine has something to say about everything. Moraine says I mustn't go to the men who are dying in my name. Moraine says I'll know what to do next because the pattern will force me to it. Moraine says. But she never says how I'll know. Oh no, she doesn't know that. His hands fell to his sides and he turned toward Perrin, head tilted and eyes narrowed. Sometimes I feel as if Moraine is putting me through my paces like a fancy tyrant stallion, doing his steps. Do you ever feel that? Perrin scrubbed a hand through his shaggy hair. Whatever is pushing us or pulling us, I know who the enemy is, Rand. Baalzamon, Rand said softly. An ancient name for the Dark One. In the Trolloc tongue, it meant Art of the Dark. And I must face him, Perrin. His eyes closed in a grimace, half smile, half pain. Light, help me. Half the time I want it to happen now, to be over and done with, and the other half... How many times can I manage to... Light, it pulls at me so. What if I can't... What if I... The ground trembled. Rand? Perrin said worriedly. Rand shivered. Despite the chill, there was sweat on his face. His eyes were still shut tight. Oh, Light, he groaned. It pulls so... Suddenly the ground heaved beneath Perrin and the valley echoed with a vast rumble. It seemed as if the ground was jerked out from under his feet. He fell, or the earth leaped up to meet him. The valley shook as though a vast hand had reached down from the sky to wrench it out of the land. He clung to the ground while it tried to bounce him like a ball. Pebbles in front of his eyes leaped and tumbled, and dust rose in waves. Rand! His bellow was lost in the grumbling roar. Rand stood with his head thrown back, his eyes still shut tight. He did not seem to feel the thrashing of the ground that had him now at one angle, now at another. His balance never shifted, no matter how he was tossed. Perrin could not be certain, being shaken as he was, but he thought Rand wore a sad smile. The trees flailed about, and the leather leaf suddenly cracked in two, the greater part of its trunk crashing down not 3 paces from Rand. He noticed it no more than he noticed any of the rest. Perrin struggled to fill his lungs. Rand! For the love of the light! Rand, stop it! As abruptly as it had begun, it was done. A weakened branch cracked off of a stunted oak with a loud snap. Perrin got to his feet slowly, coughing. Dust hung in the air, sparkling motes in the rays of the setting sun. Rand was staring at nothing now, chest heaving as if he had run 10 miles. This had never happened before, nor anything remotely like it. Rand, Perrin said carefully. What? Rand still seemed to be looking into a far distance. It is always there, calling to me, pulling at me. Saidin, the male half of the true source. Sometimes I can't stop myself from reaching out for it. He made a motion of plucking something out of the air and transferred his stare to his closed fist. I can feel the taint even before I touch it. The Dark One's taint, like a thin coat of vileness trying to hide the light. It turns my stomach, but I cannot help myself. I cannot. Only sometimes I reach out and it's like trying to catch air. His empty hand sprang open and he gave a bitter laugh. What if that happens when the last battle comes? What if I reach out and catch nothing? Well, you caught something that time, Perrin said hoarsely. What were you doing? Rand looked around as if seeing things for the first time. The fallen leather leaf and the broken branches. There was, Perrin realized, surprisingly little damage. He had expected gaping rents in the earth. The wall of trees looked almost whole. I did not mean to do this. It was as if I tried to open a tap and instead pulled the whole tap out of the barrel. It filled me. I had to send it somewhere before it burned me up, but I did not mean this. Perrin shook his head. What use to tell him to try not to do it again? He barely knows more about what he's doing than I do. He contented himself with, there are enough who want you dead, and the rest of us.
Round 1,
Are
man.
you doing the job for them? Rand did not seem to be listening. We had best get on back to the camp. It will be dark soon. And I don't know about you, but I'm hungry. What? Oh, you go on, Perrin. I will be alone. I want to be alone again a while. Perrin hesitated, then turned reluctantly toward the crack in the valley wall. He stopped when Rand spoke again. You have dreams when you sleep? Good dreams? Sometimes, Rand said wearily. I don't remember much of what I dream. He had learned to set guards on his dreaming. There are always dreams, Rand said, so softly Perrin barely heard. Maybe they tell us things, true things. He fell silent, brooding. Supper is waiting, Perrin said, but Rand was deep in his own thoughts. Finally, Perrin turned and left him standing there. Chapter 3. News from the Plain. Darkness shrouded part of the crack, for in one place the tremors had collapsed a part of the wall against the other side, high up. He stared up at the blackness warily before hurrying underneath, but the slab of stone seemed to be solidly wedged in place. The itch had returned to the back of his head, stronger than before. No, burn me. No. It went away. When he came out above the camp, the bowl was filled with odd shadows from the sinking sun. Moraine was standing outside her hut, peering up at the crack. He stopped short. She was a slender, dark-haired woman, no taller than his shoulder, and pretty, with the ageless quality of all Aes Sedai who had worked with the One Power for a time. He could not put any age at all to her, with her face too smooth for many years, and her dark eyes too wise for youth. Her dress of deep blue silk was disarrayed and dusty. Wisps stuck out in her usually well-ordered hair. A smudge of dust lay across her face. He dropped his eyes. She knew about him, she and Blan alone, of those in the camp. He did not like the knowing in her face when she looked into his eyes. Yellow eyes. Someday perhaps he could bring himself to ask her what she knew, and Aes Sedai must know more of it than he did. But this was not the time. There never seemed to be a time. He didn't mean. It was an accident. An accident, she said in a flat voice, then shook her head and vanished back inside the hut. The door banged shut a little loudly. Perrin drew a deep breath and continued on down toward the cook fires. There would be another argument between Rand and the Aes Sedai in the morning, if not tonight. Half a dozen trees lay toppled on the slopes of the bowl, roots ripped out of the earth in arcs of soil. A trail of scrapes and churned ground led down to the stream side in a boulder that had not been there before. One of the huts up the opposite slope had collapsed in the tremors, and most of the Shienarans were gathered around it, rebuilding it. Loyal was with them. The Ogier could pick up a log it would take 4 men to lift. Uno's curses occasionally drifted down. Min stood by the fires, stirring a kettle with a disgruntled expression. There was a small bruise on her cheek, and a faint smell of burned stew hung in the air. I hate cooking, she announced, and peered doubtfully into the kettle. If something goes wrong with it, it isn't my fault. Rand spilled half of it on the fire with his... What right does he have to bounce us around like sacks of grain? She rubbed the seat of her breeches and winced. When I get my hands on him, I'll thump him so he never forgets. She waved the wooden spoon at Perrin as if she intended to start the thumping with him. Was anyone hurt? Only if you count bruises, Min said grimly. They were upset all right, at first. Then they saw Moraine staring off toward Rand's hidey hole and decided it was his work. If the dragon wants to shake the mountain down on our heads, then the dragon must have a good reason for it. If he decided to make them take off their skins and dance in their bones, they would think it all right. She snorted and wrapped the spoon on the edge of the kettle. He looked back toward Moraine's hut. If Leah had been hurt, if she were dead, the Aes Sedai would not simply have gone back inside. The sense of waiting was still there. Whatever it is, it hasn't happened yet. Min, maybe you had better go. First thing in the morning. I have some silver I can let you have, and I'm sure Moraine would give you enough to take passage with the merchant's train out of Jordan. You could be back in Bay long before you know it. She looked at him until he began to wonder if he had said something wrong. Finally, she said, "That is very sweet. But no. I thought you wanted to go. You're always carrying on about having to stay here." "I knew an Ilyanar woman once," she said slowly. "When she was young, her mother arranged a marriage for her with a man she had never even met. They do that down in Ilion sometimes. She said she spent the first 5 years raging against him, and the next 5 scheming to make his life miserable without his knowing who it was. It was only years later, she said, that she realized he really had been the love of her life." "I don't see what that has to do with this." Her look said he obviously was not trying to understand, and her voice became overly patient. "Just because fate has chosen something for you instead of you choosing it for yourself doesn't mean it has to be bad. Even if it's something you are sure you would never have done in 100 years. Better 10 days of love than years of regretting," she quoted. "I understand that even less," I told her. "You don't have to stay if you don't want to." She hung the spoon on a tall forked stick stuck in the ground, then surprised him by rising on tiptoe to kiss his cheek. "You are a very nice parent, Ibarra, even if you don't understand anything." Perrin blinked at her uncertainly. He wished that he could be certain Rand was in his right mind, or that Matt were there. He was never sure of his ground with girls, but Rand always seemed to know his way. So did Matt. Most of the girls back home in Emmonsfield had sniffed that Matt would never grow up, but he had seemed to have a way with them. "What about you, Perrin? Don't you ever want to go home?" "All the time," he said fervently. "But I do not think I can. Not yet." He looked off toward Rand's veil. "We are tied together, it seems, aren't we, Rand? Maybe not after." He thought he had said that too softly for her to hear, but the look she gave him was full of sympathy and agreement. His ears caught faint footsteps behind him, and he looked back up toward Moraine's hut. 2 shapes were making their way down through the deepening twilight. One a woman, slender and graceful, even on the rough, slanting ground. The man, head and shoulders taller than his companion, turned off toward where the Shinarans were working. Even to Perrin's eyes, he was indistinct, sometimes seeming to vanish altogether, then appear in mid-stride, parts of him fading into the night and fading back as the wind gusted. Only a warder's shifting cloak could do that, which made the larger figure land, just as the smaller was certainly Moraine. Well behind them, another shape, even dimmer, slipped from the tree. Perrin thought, going back to his heart. Another night when he won't eat because he can't stand the way everybody looks at him. "You must have eyes in the back of your head," Finn said, frowning toward the approaching woman. "Or else the sharpest ears I've ever heard. Is that Moraine?" Careless. He had grown so used to the Shinarans knowing how well he could see, in daylight at least, they did not know about the night, that he was beginning to slip about other things. Carelessness might kill me yet. "Is the Pt.1 woman all right?" Min asked as Moraine came to the fire. "She is resting." The Aes Sedai's low voice had its usual musical quality, as if speaking were halfway to singing, and her hair and clothes were back in perfect order again. She rubbed her hands over the fire. There was a golden ring on her left hand, a serpent biting its own tail. The Great Serpent, an even older symbol for eternity than the Wheel of Time. Every woman trained in Tarvalin wore such a ring. For a moment, Moraine's gaze rested on Perrin and seemed to penetrate too deeply. She fell and split her scalp when Rand. Her mouth tightened, but in the next instant, her face was utter calm again. "I healed her, and she is sleeping. There is always a good deal of blood with even a minor scalp wound. But it was not serious." "Did you see anything about her, Min?" Min looked uncertain. I thought I saw her death. Her own face, all over blood. I was sure I knew what it meant, but as she split her scalp, are you sure she is all right? It was a measure of her discomfort that she asked. An Aes Sedai did not heal and leave anything wrong that could be healed, and Moraine's talents were particularly strong in that area. Min sounded so troubled that Perrin was surprised for a moment. Then he nodded to himself. She did not really like doing what she did, but it was a part of her. She thought she knew how it worked, or some of it at least. If she was wrong, it would almost be like finding out she did not know how to use her own hands. Moraine considered her for a moment, serene and dispassionate. You have never been wrong in any reading for me, not one about which I had any way of knowing. Perhaps this is the first time. But I know, they whispered obstinately. I tell me I do. Or perhaps it is yet to come. She has a long way yet to go to return to her wagons. She must ride through unsettled lands. The Aes Sedai's voice was a cool song, uncaring. Perrin made an involuntary sound in his throat. Night. Did I sound like that? As if he had spoken out loud, Moraine laughed. The wheel weaves. The wheel wheels. I told you long ago that we were in a war. We cannot stop just because some of us may die. Any of us may die. Leah's weapon was the same as yours, but she knew it when she became quiet. Perrin dropped his eyes. Yes, it may be, I said but I will never accept it the way you do. Lan joined them across the fire. The flames cast flickering shadows across the warder's face, making it seem more carved from stone, even than it normally did. All hard planes. His cloak was not much easier to take than the fire. Sometimes it seemed only a dark gray cloak or black. But the gray and black appeared to fall and change if you look too closely. Shapes and shadows sliding across it. Other times it looked as if Lan had somehow made a hole in the night and pulled darkness round his shoulders. Not at all an easy thing to watch, and not made any easier by the man who wore it. Lan was tall and hard, broad-shouldered, with blue eyes like frozen mountain lakes, and he moved with a deadly grace that made the sword on his hip seem a part of him. But it was not that he seemed merely capable of violence and death. This man had tamed violence and death, and kept them in his pocket, ready to be loosed or embraced, should one appeared less dangerous. There was a touch of gray in his hair, held back by a woven leather cord around his forehead. But younger men stepped back from confronting Lan, if they were wise. Mr. Clear has the usual news, he said. Everyone fighting everyone else. Villages burned, people fleeing in every direction. And hunters have appeared in the plain, searching for the Horn of Valia. Perrin shifted. The point was that no hunter on Alma's plain would find it. No hunter ever would find it. And she gave him a cool look before continuing. She did not like any of them to speak of the Horn, except when she chose to, of course. There were different news as well. The White had perhaps 5,000 men on Alma's plain. Una grunted. Simon, pardon, I said I. That must be half their strength. They've never committed so much to one
Still
place
recover
before.
from that one.
Then I suppose all those who declared for Rand are dead or scattered, Perrin muttered.
No, that could be why
Or
it's
they
so
similar
harsh.
looking. You are right, Morty.
It's a sliver.
He did not like the thought of White Cloaks. He did not like the Children of the Light at all. That is what his said the first time. The children have announced that their purpose is to bring peace, which is unusual. What is unusual is that while they are trying to force the Caravaners and the Domani back across their respective borders, they have not moved in any force against those who have declared for the dragon. Then gave an exclamation of surprise. Is she certain? That does not sound like any white cloaks I ever heard. There can't be many tinkers left on the plane, Uno said. His voice creaked from the strain of watching his language in front of an Aes Sedai. His real eye matched the frown of the painted one. They don't like to stay where there's any kind of trouble, especially fighting. There can't be enough of them to see everywhere. There are enough for most, Moraine said firmly. Most have gone, but some few remain because I asked them to. And Leah is quite certain. Oh, the children have snapped up some of the dragon's swarm, but there were only a handful gathered. But they will bring down this false dragon. Though they have 1,000 men supposedly doing nothing but hunting him, they avoid contact with any party of as many as 50 dragons swarming. Not openly, you understand. But there is always some delay, something that allows those they chase to slip.
Then Ryan can go down to them as he wants.
Loyal blinked uncertainly at the Aes Sedai.
Definitely won't hit that one because that's just like.
The wheel weaves the link line.
Uno and Lan opened their mouths
That's
at the
like
same time.
almost
Shinar
pretty much
gave
gone.
a small bow. More likely, Victor said, it is some white cloak plot. Though the light burn me if I can see what it is. But when the white cloaks give me a gift, I search for the poison needle hidden in it. Uno nodded.
Yeah, like definitely you tap the fog.
Which, Lan added, the Damani and the Taraboners are still trying as hard to kill the dragon sworn as they are to kill each other. And there is another thing, Moraine said. 3 young men have died in villages Mistress Leah's wagons passed near. Baron noticed a flicker of Lan's eyelid. For the warder, it was as much a sign of surprise as a shout from another man. Lan had not expected her to tell this. Moraine went on. 1 died by poison, 2 by the knife. Each in circumstances where no one should have been able to come close unseen. But that is how it happened. She peered into the flames. All 3 young men were taller than most and had light-colored eyes. Light eyes are uncommon along the plain. But I think it is very unlucky right now to be a tall young man with light eyes there. How? Baron asked. How could they be killed if no one could get close to them? The Dark One has killers you don't notice until it is too late, Lan said quietly. Uno gave a shiver. The Soulless. I never heard of one south of the borderlands before. Enough of such talk, Moraine said firmly. Baron had questions. What in the light of the Soulless? Are they like a Trolloc? Or a Fade? What? But he left them unasked. When Moraine decided enough had been said about something, she would not talk of it anymore. And when she shut her mouth, you could not pry lands open with an iron bar. The Shinarans followed her lead too. No one wanted to anger an Aes Sedai. Light, Min muttered, uneasily eyeing the deepening darkness around him. You don't notice them? Light. So nothing has changed, Baron said glumly. Not really. We cannot go down to the plain and the Dark One wants us dead. Everything changes, Moraine said calmly. The pattern takes it all in. We must ride on the pattern, not on the changes of a moment. She looked at them each in turn, then said, Uno, are you certain your scouts missed nothing suspicious? Even something small? The Lord Dragon's rebirth has loosed the bonds of certainty, Moraine Sedai, and there is never certainty if you fight Murkrow. But I will stake my life that the scouts did as good a job as any warder.
Right.
This was one of the longest.
Just got to make sure.
Without any curses.
So you got to double check it.
There was sweat.
Triple check it.
Yeah. We all did, Moraine said. What Rand did might as well have been a fire on the mountaintop for any Murkrow within 10 miles. Maybe, Min began hesitantly. Maybe you ought to set wards that will keep them out. Lan gave her a hard stare. He sometimes questioned Moraine's decisions himself, though he seldom did so where anyone could overhear. But he did not approve of others doing the same. Min frowned right back at him. Well, Murkle and Trollocs are bad enough, but at least I can see them. I don't like the idea that one of these soulless might sneak in here and slit my throat before I even noticed him. The wards I set will hide us from the soulless as well as from any other shadow spawn, Moraine said. When you are weak, as we are, the best choice is often to hide. If there is a half-man close enough to her, well, to set wards that would kill them if they tried to enter camp is beyond my abilities. And even if I could, such a warding would only pen us here. Since it is not possible to set two kinds of warding at once, I leave the scouts and the guards and land to defend us, and use the one warding that may do some good. I could make a circuit around the camp, Lan said. If there's anything out there that the scouts missed, I will find it. It was not opposed, just a statement of fact. Uno even nodded agreement. Moraine shook her head. If you are needed tonight, my guardian, it will be here. Her gaze rose toward the dark mountains around them. There is a feeling in the air. Waiting. The word left Perrin's tongue before he could stop it. When Moraine looked at him, into him, he wished he had it back. Yes, she said. Waiting. Make sure your guards are especially alert tonight, Uno. There was no need to suggest that the men sleep with their weapons close at hand. Shinarans always did that. Sleep well, she added to them all, as if there were any chance of that now, and started back for her hut. Lan stayed long to spoon up 3 dishes of stew, then hurried after her, quickly swallowed by the night. Perrin's eyes shone golden as they followed the warder through the darkness. Sleep well, he muttered. The smell of cooked meat suddenly made him queasy. I have the third watch, Uno? The Shinaran nodded. Then I will try to take her advice. Others were coming to the fires, and murmurs of conversation followed him up the slope. He had a hut to himself, a small thing of logs barely tall enough to stand in, the chinks filled with dried mud. A rough bed, padded with pine boughs, beneath a blanket, took up nearly half of it. Whoever had unsaddled his horse had also propped his bow just inside the door. He hung up his belt, with axe and quiver, on a peg, then stripped down to his small clothes, shivering. The nights were cold still, but cold kept him from sleeping too deeply. In deep sleep, dreams came that he could not shake off. For a time, with a single blanket over him, he lay staring at the log roof, shivering. Then sleep came, and with it, dreams. Chapter 4. Shadows Sleep.
Alright, everyone, I'm gonna call into this life tonight. It's a little earlier than usual, but I'm a little tired. But I want to thank everyone for stopping by, and everyone who stops by and everyone who keeps stopping by. I appreciate all y'all's support. Until next time, everyone, y'all stay safe out there.